You are fluent in Latin. After a car accident, you find yourself in a fantasy world. In this world, humans have been slaves to other species, all of whom use magic. Humans have the capability to use magic, but only by learning the elves' language. After hearing it, you find that it is Latin. I died. I was sure of it. The truck had hit me head on, and that had been it. The darkest blackness followed by the brightest white. And then I'd woken up here. Wherever here was. The buildings were like nothing I'd ever seen before. I was pretty sure that a good third of them were living trees with buildings inside of them. Then there were the stone monstrosities. Not castles per se, but more like above-ground caves. Or inside out? I'm not sure. I'd not been inside one yet, humans weren't allowed. That was the kicker, the real I'm not in Kansas anymore moment. Elves, orcs, dwarves, dragons, you name it from fantasy and it's here. And the elves ruled it all. I'd only met one or two so far, been issued a few short commands, and sent on my way. I was a slave, I guess? I was fed and housed, and they hadn't made me do anything yet, but others did. It was also apparently normal for humans to just arrive here. I wasn't the first, nor was I the only one from Earth, but no one seemed to want to talk about home. It almost felt as if they'd forgot about it since they'd been here. It made my skin crawl. You there? An orcish guard said, pointing at me, and gesturing me over. It was early in the morning, and I'd been just about to line up for breakfast. Taken aback, I looked over my shoulder, as if there might be someone standing there behind me. But I'd been the last one to leave our bunk area and was most definitely the one he was talking to. Yes, sir? I asked politely. I'd seen guards like him beat others when they weren't respectful enough. You're due for your job assignment today. Follow me, he glared at me, as if daring me not to follow him. My stomach grumbled once, as the smell of fried eggs and whatever that tuber-like vegetable was, they fed us, floated past. But I didn't stop to look back. I was hungry, not stupid. We exited the low structure that we humans lived in and crossed a small plaza to one of the living tree buildings. I wanted to ogle around myself, but I'd been told to keep my eyes down and keep quiet. The others knew that I'd be assessed soon, and they had at least shared that experience with me. It should be mostly painless, and if I was biddable enough, quick. Up 2 flights of stairs that seemed to be floating on air, not suspended by the tree or anything else I could see, and I was in a small room. The orc mumbled something to an elvish woman in dark orange robes, and then headed out. The woman turned her gaze from him, to me. Sit. There was no gesture, and the words were spit out as if she loathed speaking at me. I did as she commanded. In the only chair in the room, I sat, perched uneasily on the edge. I'd been a scholar back home. Or as my parents seemed to call it, a forever student, getting out of paying my loans by continuously enrolling in more classes. There were humans here who curated the elvish libraries, and I hoped I'd be assigned a role like that. I wasn't exactly the physical labor body type. My focus stayed on the elf, who was pacing back and forth looking at me, disdain written across her face. Name? She asked, though we both knew it didn't matter, she'd be assigning me a new one momentarily anyways. Drew. I kept it short, and to the point. No need for my titles or even last name. She frowned for a moment, then said, lean back. I did, though I could feel my heart thudding in my chest as I moved. I was anxious, and I just wanted this to be over with. She walked behind the chair and hovered her hands on either side of my head and started chanting. Indica mihi, est natura eius, aston mihi, quid. Latin? She was speaking Latin. But her hands were glowing an ominous red, and she'd asked for it to reveal my nature? I couldn't help it, my head twisted to look up at her. Her eyes narrowed, and as she said, stop moving, a small spark of magic shocked me. She started speaking again, and more Latin followed. I couldn't believe it. Magic here was powered by Latin, one of my 3 language degrees. She'd now started to command the magic to change me. To make me forget. Even as she spoke, I could feel my memories fuzz, and in a panic, I asked the first thing that came to mind. Cur Latine loqui, why are you speaking Latin? And she stopped speaking mid-word. Eyes wide, she stared at me in horror. You should not know the language of our people, you heathen, she said, her voice pitched high and her hands dropping away from my head. With her hands gone, and her spell incomplete, my mind cleared, and my first instinct was to issue a command of my own in Latin. Me solum relinquatus, or leave me alone. Gold essence seemed to issue forth with my words, and even as I spoke, she turned and left the room. Leaving me all alone.